Put it under the back, fairly.
Yes.
Oh, you need any more? I don't know. The door here. Sure. Over. Remember? Yep. Yeah. Oh, great.
What a way of getting the appointment.
Maybe a spawn. Smear each other.
And so you get to be a
Turn that towards How many people are new to the painting class? Anybody? Raise your hand.
Come up.
I always put a tone on here to fill the white of the canvas. Also, for you who are new here, the palette too has a piece of gray cardboard underneath it, so that colors, light colors will look correct against dark colors. If I had a white palette, the flesh tone might look like a dark if I mixed it down there, so I couldn't know what I was doing. Everything was the Sargent show?
Yeah.
Everybody did?
How many times?
You don't get marks for it, do you? Probably not all of you went to that lecture that they had on the 17th, when we all went as a group. The man that gave the lecture after the tour of the Sargent show, he was pretty interesting. It was fairly slated to the layman, but he said something that to me was really interesting, because he talked about the development of Sargent's style, and he talked about Sargent going into Carlos Duran's atelier, and how Duran followed the traditions that were started in the Flemish school back with Frans Hals, and they juxtaposed one of Sargent's portraits with a Frans Hals portrait of a guy with a big lace collar, and showed the similarity not in the subject matter or even in the style, but the similarity in the structure, the handling of the painting technique. And what it was simply was that the Flemish school, particularly Hals and later on Van Dyck, all these boys started with a kind of average flesh tone that was neither, it neither represented the extreme dark and extreme light. It was sort of that nice pink that they put in advertisements. And then they mixed a value that was darker than that, pretty much the same color, and one that was lighter than that. And they modeled all the darks and all the lights on it, almost like as if that original flesh tone was a ball of clay or putty, and they were modeling it with tones of the same color, dark tones and light tones. It was interesting to me because it's the approach that I fell into for years and years, and started expounding here and over the palette and chisel. And it seems to be the simplest way to get a very fast and very accurate, very painterly portrait. It was a deviation from the traditional method of all kinds of painting where a line drawing was done first and then the color was put in on top of that. And different techniques depending on whether they were working in gesso or whether they were glazing or what. But it wasn't only the Flemish school that did this. I'm not sure of my dates, but it either spilled over or it was happening at the same time in the Spanish school with Velasquez and those boys. So it was sort of a natural, it seemed to be a natural way that artists fell into to paint in the grand manner of, that eventually culminated in Sargent, Lyon, and so on, and people like that. Leo Foots in Germany at that time. And what I'm going to try and do today. The idea of it is that with that basic tone, you can construct the head, and you have the option of adding color to it to make it a full color painting later. Everything is in the right place, and you can put the color in where it belongs. Or you can add color as you go along. It depends on how sophisticated and how far along you are in your painting ability. So that would be the tones would represent broad tones on the forehead and across the middle part of the face. It would be a little bit darker. That is a very healthy cavity. It's been weighing almost 8 feet. On high cholesterol. Yeah, patient with that. Now this is a real hot light in here, so I have to be careful I don't get too warm in here because it'll look okay in here, but you get it in a better light, it'll look much too red. Now they say that Sargent didn't worry too much about features when he started in the initial phase of his painting. He would get the shape of the head, and I think what that meant was that it wasn't that he ignored the features entirely, but he looked at them as structural things rather than as, say, eyeballs or eyelashes or nostrils. So he would see things in their broad shadows and their broad shapes. tend to start all my paintings in the area right between the bridge of the nose, and then build everything on that, measure it by trying to get that accurate. The distance between the shadow on the right side of his nose and the beginning of the eyebrow on his left side. That eyebrow goes up like that. This is the area that I'm working here. I'm going to measure everything against that. You notice I'm not using dark that's really as dark as what's up there. This is pretty much the same color as the original tones, just 4 or 5 values darker. You can almost paint the entire head in a lighting situation like this with 2 values up to a certain point. Certainly you can paint it in 2 values and get a perfect likeness. I would guess that what Sargent would do would be to see the entire eye socket as one shape, like something like this. You can probably see this. Notice how the eye sockets are in no way similar in the shapes of their darks. Y'all follow me now? Here we are. Getting these accurate is crucial to the entire painting because I'll measure everything against these shapes. And I want to find out where the nostrils are, and I want to find out where the corners of the mouth are, where the chin is. I'll always look at it and say, what does that particular point fall directly under relative to this? Would it fall under the high point of the eyebrow? Would it fall under this point? Drop my imaginary lines down like that. Find out where those points are. And then to make sure that these shapes are accurate, go back in and correct them with the lighter value. And I'm fairly sure that they're on the button. Now at this point I can finish the eyes completely in full value and full color, and then, because I'm satisfied that this is accurate. I can go and put the eyeballs in and the darks and the suggestion of the lid and all of those things, and then I can go down and paint the nose. In other words, I can finish it from this point as I go along. Every stroke that I put on would be a finishing stroke. That's one way to do it. The other way is to proceed with this 2-value business until I get more or less a complete head. Then I go back in and start adding lighter values and darker values and local color, like the color of the lips and the color of the nose and the color of the eyes. Or you can combine it. You can do both methods. You can finish it off a little more. It's probably a pretty good idea at this point to get some additional comparison points in here to get the accuracy that will be needed later. To add 1 or 2 more elements, like the eyelids, particularly the left ones. Find out exactly where that is, because that would be something that I would latch on later as a point I would measure things against. Also, at this point, it might be a good idea to indicate not as indicate the pupils of the eyes, not in their final value, but indicate them with a slightly darker value just to get their exact placement. If you look directly at me now. That would give the expression and the attitude for having, if they're too far apart or if they're too close together, it will really give a lot of trouble in the later painting. Even at this point, they look like they're looking towards me. Even without any of the other elements in them, at least it does to me. Also, it's helpful when you do this kind of painting to choose choose temperatures, these lights and darks, which are fairly similar to what's up there. For example, I indicated these. They look kind of cool from here. I put them in as a kind of bluish color. It would be tempting while I've got that color on here to go ahead and indicate a couple of the other darks that are in there. But it's the wrong color. I mean, it's really way on the other side of the color spectrum. So if I'm going to indicate other things, it's more convenient to have them with at least the same temperature if they're going to be in the final paint. That way you don't have to repaint them. Also, there are variations on this technique of modeling on top of a basic tone like this. One variation is that you don't have to use a kind of middle tone to put this in. You can go right to the full value if you can see it correctly and you know where it's supposed to go. And after you do this for a while, if you try this kind of thing, your eye will get so good that sometimes you can go right in with your darkest dark immediately. You can just put almost like finished painting from the very beginning. You can see that Sargent did that in quite a number of his paintings. In fact, his original strokes were so accurate that he used the color of the canvas in many cases as a final, as part of the flesh tone, for example, or part of the drapery. He didn't even have to put paint on the canvas. He had already conceived of that color, the color of the canvas as part of his finished painting. A lot of those pictures were done in maybe an hour, 2 hours at the most. There's the painting of Watson Forbes, I guess, next to Vernon Lee over there. Now that couldn't have been done in more than 2.5 hours. About the time it takes us to paint over the chisel. Vernon Lee, I think, took a little bit more, maybe 4 hours at the most. Oh, they have a bell? Yeah. Okay, we'll go explain the bell. Okay, now dropping down from the point that I stopped, now the next thing, I always proceed from one known thing to another known thing, okay? So the next, for me, the next important thing is where's the nose in relation to all this, from my standpoint here. So I find out where the edge of the nostril is, and it falls directly to me this point. Okay, so there's a line. I don't usually draw a line like this, but I'm just drawing it to show you. But I know that this is as far over as it will go. All right. Now, how far down is it? All right. The easiest way to find out how far down it is not to go from here to the bottom of the nose, but to go from the known point, say there, to the top of the nostril, or the top of the wing of the nostril, I should say, because that's a short distance, and short distances are easier to judge than long distances. It's easier to go from here to here than it is to go from here down to there. Okay, this makes sense.
Sounds like Bose, yeah, I remember Bose saying.
Did he say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, that I know. Okay, then it's easy to drop the next short distance and you get the bottom of the nostril. And if I put a horizontal line across from there, and just about intersects the point of the nose. Okay, so I know the point of the nose is out there somewhere. And then I hope that far down. Now, how far over it is, I'm dropping the line directly down to another known point, which would be midway between the other two eyebrows. So that's the lowest point of the nose. And that's how you find it. If I'm right. You know you're right, but it looks right when you put it in well. Yeah. Parts of it. Now the entire left side of the face is slightly lighter than the entire right side of the face. So there's a value in here. I don't have to draw a line down the nose to find out where it is. So I can do that, get the value on the right side of his face, this part here. Anytime you save work, that's one way to do it. Now, there are a couple of other things you can do. I can do at this point is you'll latch onto a couple of highlights and put them in there as additional reference points, things I can measure against. You can use darks as measuring points, or you can use lights. Especially, you usually use highlights. Not all, you use other things, but I saw in some of his charcoal drawings that he would sometimes start a charcoal drawing on a paper that's already toned, or a paper that's already gray, or he would tone it with the charcoal. Then he'd go in with the white chalk and start doing this triangulating business. But he would go from the highlight on the forehead to the highlight on the top of the eyebrow, to the highlight in the bridge of the nose, to the highlight on the end of the nose, and the highlight on the top of the chin, and so on. And he'd spend hours, sometimes days, just doing this. So it's just another way of approaching it, but it's the same basic idea, measuring always one thing against another. What does it fall opposite, and what does it fall below? There are other ways to achieve accuracy in drawing. I think this is the simplest way. Other ways are to see angles, where one thing shoots into another thing where it intersects. All you're doing there is taking the horizontal business and moving it this way. One can take the angle of the nose and say, go over and say, well, how does that relate to the angle of the forehead? That, so on and so on. I think that's a little harder to see, because measuring angles is a lot more subtle than measuring the 90 degrees.
When we've got a lot of the drawing down, would you recommend checking it with them?
Yeah, everything, you can use all kinds of things to verify. The best verification is that when you step back, does it look like what you're painting? It doesn't have to always be perfect. There's a lot of room for distortion and characterization. Like El Greco, for example, and Picasso and his early stuff. Augustus John. Any of you know the works of Augustus John? He would do fantastic things with a head. He would pick out some very powerful thing about a person's face and exaggerate it. He would always stay within the bounds of realism, but there was just enough exaggeration, and it wasn't enough to be sturdy. It was enough to draw attention to what it was about that person that made them unique. That was his way of doing it, the use of distortions. It still looked like the person. In fact, it looked far more like the person because it didn't look like anybody else. I find that the edge of his mustache falls on the line outside your head. You notice while I'm doing this too, that I'm paying attention to edges, soft edges and hard edges. It's something you can do as you go along. In many cases, there's no point at which things actually start to stop. Here it's pretty clear cut on this side. You can almost draw a line around the shadow. The only real soft edge on the right side, his right side, is where this one trails off down in here. On this side, you have to make a decision that it stops at some point. it's still a soft edge. That's how you can show that the transition is a little bit vague by a soft edge. And soft edge can be achieved by mixing lighter and lighter values, or you can do it just by feathering with the brush. Now, it's already a portrait. It already looks like that. And with those beautiful elements in there. And the decision has to be made at this point how far you want to go. At this point, it's a very pliable thing. You can go anywhere. You can go into really full value, completely photographic portrait. Or we can just simply go into more and more values, trying to keep it as painterly as this. Probably at this point it'd be a good idea to start getting in some of the other major values. It's not possible to make a judgment on these values unless I know what's going to be back on this one. Anybody got any questions?
The brushes are you using to apply your, are they staple brushes?
These? Those magnet. Let me get here. Marvelous language.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, fine. Now, at this point, I'm fairly satisfied that all the major areas are in there fairly accurately in relationship to one another. To me, it looks like that this correction I made up there was crucial to the likeness. There was a slight error there. And by measuring, it's deceptive how far back that went. By measuring from this point directly down, I found out that it actually intersected the lobing here. That could come back even more. That really locked in the likeness. I don't know why, but it did. I guess the likeness. But that's a very important part of what makes him look like what he does. If that line, if this hairline were any different, he would not look the way he does. He might look like he did 10 years ago, but it's a very strong characteristic. And one that's really always a pleasure to see. The hardest people to paint is perfect people. If you ever have a really great looking model here, you know, about 19 years old, not a wrinkle, and everything in the right place, it drives up the wall, the naked. But when you got a face that has a story to tell, 2 years behind it, it's just a joy. Hopefully it suggests the years yet. Right? Yes.
Best is yet to come.
Now, at this point, it's just a matter of improving the color and getting the values that are missing, getting them in there. That would be the very, very dark darks, the very highlight. There's really only one great highlight, and that's right on the nose there. The highlight, they're subordinate to this one. Very often in class, there's a tendency to mix up the color of the highlight, and you put it here, 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 and here. It just doesn't look right. One of the reasons it doesn't look right is the head has three basic color bands across it. There are three pigmentation bands, at least in Caucasians. Or it's more apparent in Caucasians. And that is, tends towards the yellow across the forehead, towards the red across the center of the face, and towards the gray on the bottom. And if you look for that, it comes out more and more with age and with very fair-skinned people. There are other color bands on the body in general. Some of those are not related to pigmentation. They're related to things like tannic acid in the skin, for example. It literally tans your hide. It makes certain areas of you yellow, areas where you tend to sweat a lot, for example. Other areas, our extremities, our elbows, our fingertips, our nose, they tend to be redder because of the increased circulation at those points. So it's not just pigmentation, also the thickness and thinness of the skin.
on a long line like that from the forehead, are you finding points where it changes, or are you going by just the shape that it looks?
You just go to the step?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you find that the point of, there's two lines. One goes almost straight up and then it stops and makes a change in direction and then it's a slow curve to that point. And that top point falls is directly above his point on the eye. Change in direction occurs just inside this point on the right eye. You can do it the other way, but this way is more accurate. And this is the way to check it. If you do it the other way, you can check it again to see, well, did I end up in the right place?
Are you squinting constantly to look at them?
Yes. That's why this value is so dark. Go down there. See how dark that is in relation to all the other flesh tones.
Yeah.
This is the real study in edges, this side. That's the study. Interesting, isn't it, how a painting can go through a series of expression changes while you're painting it? Almost like animation. That's why the camera will never be played together. worried about that. That's the expression of the teacher that comes at you, oh, you did something wrong with
We see that a lot.
What did I do now?
We never.
Huh? That's great. About 1 minute to take a break.
The bell goes off 40 seconds.
Okay.
Do that.
Locks the bridge.
So fancy.
Yeah, I can't do that. That's what there we go.
I wanted to point out that I scrape my palette at each break, at least each time, to get a completely clean palette. What's on there is going to end up on the painting. You throw away a lot of paint this way, but then you also get a nice painting that's sort of clean in color. I've seen a lot of people work till they get the palette, gets more and more of the same color. Everything starts getting a little gray, sort of a brown gray. And then to get clean color, they're working over in a little space, right over the corner.
What's the brush you use?
I use these, well, I use all kinds of brushes, but the ones I'm using right now are these nickel brushes. Well, Bresnell's has a selection, but they don't have the ones with the long hairs on. Well, these are, I guess, the blues that have this which I'm not a stock holder. 1953 and 54. Were you teaching here, Brian?
That was my first year at 63.
Well, you know who this is.
We all know.
Welcome back.
I was fretting that I'm going to have to pay to enroll in a class if I want to be a teacher.
That's maybe about 5 on the.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you see how the last part of this whole thing was adding a lot of color to basic tone that's when we get real proficient at this kind of thing, you find that this color will start to emerge earlier. The way I'm working now is I do still start with this kind of tone, but then I start, before I go into the modeling, before I start suggesting the eye sockets or the nose or the mouth or the chin, I start putting in some of the color bands that I know are going to emerge later on. Okay, I don't even put them in the shapes. I just put them in because I know that this part of the head is going to be more ruddy than the top part. This part's going to be gray. I start suggesting in a very impressionistic way some of the color that's going to be really there later. Then I start modeling. Yeah. Yeah. You notice it didn't get muddy, yeah. When I started, when I first started on this, I mixed the color, and then the color I used to put in the eye sockets was a darker version of the same color, so that in effect I was working in a harmony, a monochromatic harmony, so that it was impossible to get it muddy if the color I started out with was nice. The idea is to start out with, say, 3 nice colors. You have the basic color of the head, a nice color for the shadow, and a nice color for the lighter parts in the light. You can't go wrong. Rather than mix it all up with, start, say, drawing with a color that isn't in there. When I started drawing in here, indicating where the eye was going to go, as I said, instead of using a funny blue, I used the color that really was there as the color that I was drawing with. I suggest when you're working on a head, to do the drawing in the head, if you want to make indications of where the eye starts and where it stops, use a nice warm color, because it's almost always a rule that in flesh, when you're painting it under almost all light conditions, when it gets real dark, it's very warm and very hot. So if you work with even a pure burnt sienna or something like that, it's never going to get muddy. It's only when you start drawing with blue, and then you start drawing with red, and then you start drawing with yellow, and you're mixing tertiary colors, and it gets muddy, right?
When you did your first mixing for the original oval beginnings of the head, what colors did you use?
I used the terra rosa, it was yellow ochre and cadmium red. Not cadmium red light, just plain cadmium red. This cadmium red is it's not Grumbach, it's Winsor Newton. They make a really nice, just plain, straight old cadmium red. But it's expensive. Rembrandt makes a nice one too. It's not quite as cool. I just find in this light, when I was a student, I used cadmium red light to get that real nice orange glow on the flesh, which you can match it in here, but as I say, when you get it under another lighting situation, it's horrible. So instead, I use just plain cadmium red because it's not so orange. If I want to make it orange, I just put cadmium color in it. As I got warmer and warmer in the other mix, in the light part, say to get the cheeks and the nose and the ruddy part, those are all mixtures of cadmium red and cadmium yellow, or cadmium red and yellow ochre.
If you don't have just cadmium red, you just mix a cooler red in with it.
If you don't have cadmium red?
Yeah, if you buy it.
Red lemon. Yeah, because there's no substitute.
Add a cooler red to it to make it take out some.
No. I don't think you can mix anything and come up with a cadmium color. I really don't. You?
No.
I don't think so.
I've been using cadmium vermilion, which I find to be a little bit cooler than the light, but not as cool as the medium.
Yeah. Everybody's got their own little favorite way of doing it. And changes.
I find the light so hot.
Somebody,
Cadmium light so hot.
Shirley was telling me about a color that, what's it called? Peach black.
Oh, the French bourgeois, the peach black.
France makes a thing called peach black. And it's a black that goes real warm. It's made from what, peach pits?
Yeah, from peach pits.
animal
As
bones.
opposed to burnt bones or lampblack.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you ever use Rembrandt's Potswold Yurt?
Yeah, yeah,
That's nice, isn't it, nice color?
yeah. There's another thing called castles that they used to use for drawing your, when you are doing a drawing, or you can use it for doing a turpentine wash. And it's a brown, it's kind of a gray brown, kind of like old Dutch master brown. But it's such a weak color that whatever you mix into it won't be affected by it.
And how about Winsor Newton's mummy gray? Supply of mummies ran out. They were made for mummies, real mummies.
Come on, really?
No, yeah, I got an old catalog. I remember Mosby talking about it. I found an old catalog from Reynolds, one of the old art stores here. It had it listed. Mummies gray.
Did you hear about that?
No, I don't, but that's what I miss.
I heard that from Mosby, and I always laughed. I doubted it, but I found it listed in the catalog.
Oh, he has some great colors. He has Spank Baby Pink and all that stuff. Uncle John Gray. Anyway. So. But I think this is probably not the exact way that Sargent and all those guys painted, but it's basically, I think, the same approach when you're working very quickly in life to get something down. The idea of this is that you're not making a line drawing that you have to fill in, like painting by the numbers. In doing a line drawing, what you're doing is adding an intermediate step to the painting process. This process, or painting in general, is taking a third-dimensional situation and making it into 2 dimensions. We're creating an illusion. And in this way, we do it by juxtaposing shapes of color. So that when those shapes themselves are correct, if they're correct in relation to all the other shapes, they will form an illusion of reality, of what Ted looks like under this light, from this distance, and from this angle. Okay? If he changes the slightest bit, or if I change my angle, all those shapes change. All right? When you do a line drawing, you're not only changing it from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions, you're reinterpreting this whole thing as a diagram. Drawing is a diagram. It's like a movie. So you're adding an intermediate stage. And if you can bypass that, it's a good thing to know that and to use it, to be able to use it when you get into trouble. For example, if the model does move, for example, and a lot of models do it, Ted happened to be really great at this. And it was a fairly easy pose, but if you did a difficult pose and you had to go back a little bit this way or this way, you're going to have to know how to do line drawing so that you can fall back on things like ellipses, find out where that ear is supposed to be. If you have started a painting, let's say I started and I got all this stuff in, and he fell asleep or something like that, and the ear is way down there, and I got to find out where that ear is going to be. The only way to do it is to draw the ellipse around. If I know that the beginning of the ear is right opposite, is on a line opposite the corner of the eye, and the top of the ear is on a line opposite the top of the eyebrow, and at the bottom is on a line equal to the nose, then I can draw these ellipses around the head and find out where the center line is, and then get the exact shape of it, and find out where that ear is. See? So it's a thing you've got to know, but you don't have to apply it in this kind of a la prima painting. A la prima means one sitting, one out. Drawing is also good to know a lot of things about the way things occur in life, the way nature has designed things. For example, can I steal a piece of paper there?
Get a canvas.
Run a canvas board?
Oh, wait a minute, I got another canvas too. Working in line teaches you things to look for, among other things, when you are painting. And it teaches you that if you are seeing things that you can't quite understand or you don't like or you can't figure it out, if you know how things are designed, you can manipulate them to your own heart's desire or you can understand them. Like in anatomy classes where you learn this stuff, mainly. You learn, for example, that the eye is not the eye that we did when we were children. It's not too much like that. It's beautiful, fast curve, and a slow curve. Fast, and then slow. And the bottom is the reverse. Slow, and fast, up like that. And you learn how things are designed, and you look for that. And you learn symmetry, how these things, and you can project that over to the other side. And if you want to improve on some of these eyes, or essentially, if you see something and you want to exaggerate it or accentuate it, you know how nature intends these curves, those things in there, even if you can't see them. And of course, the line tells us all about proportion, centers of balance, and all the other things. But you can see how if I only had 2.5 hours, which is about what that is. If I had to analyze that in these terms, I'm doing this quickly. Find out the edge of the face. Find out where the chin is, and then put the beard over it, all that sort of thing. And then try and color the thing, that's a week's work. This is what they did in the 15th and 16th century. They were doing glazing and figure all this stuff out. And until the Dutch and the Spaniards came along and started painting from life. Thing called direct painting. That's the way they did it. That's the only way they knew how. Egyptians never did learn. Egyptians, they do a head, side view like that. They'd still put the eye in like it was front view. They always did that. They never did learn. They got so stuck into interpreting things in terms of line, it never occurred to them. To them it was symbolic diagramming. What we're doing is creating an illusion. And it always seems to me that instead of that business of capturing the shapes correctly. Those are just shapes, and that reads as a head. The other way to do it would be to figure out where the eyes are. Okay? Figure out where the nose goes, where the nostrils are, where the lips are, where the chin is, push the beard in. Eventually you do arrive at the same thing. And then you'd have to color all the values so they're the right value. You kind of end up where you were here. This way, you bypass that step. You're going to end up with the illusion. One is sort of taken by the nose.
Keep in mind, as to where we look right.
There's another, I watched Ray Kinsler, the portrait painter. I watched him and Bettina Steinke doing a portrait of Ken Chi last year. And it was really interesting. Ray uses a combination of line and mass painting. He does a rather careful but quick drawing. Did Chen Chi, he don't have any hair either, so that was easy. And he's done Chen Chi every year since Chen Chi was about 25 years old, because they lived in the same building in New York. And he did something like this, and he indicated where that ear was. And he indicated the tops of the eyebrows, and he indicated just where that nose was, and outlined it. I mean, he was like a machine. It just went all done. In 15 minutes, he was through with it. And she was sitting there like that. But then he went in and he did this business. He obliterated the whole thing. And, you know, he got the shadows and the whole business. And he ended up with, he also, you know, he did the background right away too, as an integral part of the value system of the whole painting. And that, he ended up with that after about 40 minutes. But in order to get there, he went through a kind of a moderate line drawing thing. Now, Bettina Steinke, on the other hand, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I've been into her studio many times, but I never, and she and I painted together when I was young, and I don't remember her painting this way. She must have developed this over the years. But this is how she did Chen Chi. She put a little tone on her canvas. It was about like that. And she started up here, and I didn't know what she was doing, but later on I found out that was how Chen Chi's head. And then she mixed another. And she did his forehead. And she did another brush. She put his eyes in. She put his nose in. And she put his cheeks in. And she put a shadow under his nose. And then she put some more stuff in here. She started from the top down, just like zipping and zipping. And she got down to something that. About 2 hours. Put it blitzing. And she went down and she did she put the shadow under the necklights. And one thing after another, she put it in his shirt like that. Anyway, and she did a beautiful job too. What else was there? Glenn Goodacre was there doing sculpture. She was doing a clay head. And she would throw in clay at this armature she had, and she did a nice job too. So everybody has their own way of doing it. But the way I'm showing you, I think it's the way the guys did it, like Sargent, Velasquez, Soraya. So good sound with painting what you see.
Who are some of the best portrait painters around today?
Today?
You?
Portrait painter. I really don't know. I don't know. Steinke, I guess, is one of them. Kurt Silverman is a marvel. I think I would take Kurt Silverman.
I would too. Actually, I think he captures the spirit of the person.
And he's an artist in everything he does. He's one of the top guys, one of the most underrated artists around. Who? Daniel Green? I still take Kurt Silverman. And Stan's work tends to be commercial. Kurt always comes across as an artist.
He paints the inside of a person. Brings it up.
Okay. I think that's it for today.
Thank you.